Okay, sorry guys, my husband needed me. So, um, anyway, walked for about 2 hours, came back. It was the same nurse who wasn't very nice to me, and she told me, "You need to make change. You made no change. You're like a 3.5 still." And just was like really like put me down, doubting that I was actually in labor. So, decided to go back on a walk. I knew this nurse was getting off at 3 in the morning or 3 in the afternoon. So she was working a 3 to 3. So I knew if I came back in after 3, there'd be someone else there so, to check me out. So went on another walk. I needed to be at a 4 in order to get admitted. So when I came back in, it was a different nurse, and it was actually a nurse that I actually knew and kind of started with at the hospital, which was kind of weird because she was going to be checking me and be my nurse and see all the business. But when you work in healthcare, you just know people do their jobs. They don't really pay attention or remember any of that anyway. So she checked me and I was at a 4. And so um, my nurse Emily admitted me, and we got the ball rolling. And I remember walking around. I had been started on IV fluids and antibiotics because I was group B strep positive at my OBGYN. So I was getting antibiotic and I was getting fluids. They had a hard time getting my IV in. But yeah, then we were in labor. We were walking around doing all the things. I do remember at one point I did get into the bathtub. That felt great. Contractions really started picking up, and I was about 7.5, 8, and decided I was gonna go ahead and get the epidural. So then I got to the epidural, and it did not work. He didn't hit it in the right spot, he said, and I didn't feel any kind of relief or anything. So he said he needed to go up higher. Then he told me that if I felt like I couldn't breathe or my arms or hands were numb, then he went up too high. So that made me super nervous. Um, so yeah, I had 2 epidurals for my daughter. But once I got the epidural, it was amazing. I couldn't feel anything. I um, was living life. I was able to kind of like rest. They were turning me every little bit, and then finally got to about a 10. I had the catheter put in because since I had the epidural and I couldn't move or anything, and I was getting IV fluids. Um, and so I remember it was time to push, and um, pushed for goodness, probably about like 2 hours. And she was only like a 6 pound baby, but yeah, pushed for like six, or she was only about 6 pounds, but pushed for about 2 hours. And I remember her heart rate kind of dropped and she was getting under some distress. And so they put a non-rebreather mask on me and told me basically I had to get her out very soon or they were going to have to like do a C-section because she was starting to get stressed out. So at that point, the doctor said, I think you're so close. She just keeps like kind of sliding back in. If we do an episiotomy, she should just come right out. Next push. So I agreed. Okay, let's just do it. Do the episiotomy, save me a C-section kind of a thing. So she did the episiotomy. I will never forget, and neither will my husband, the sound it made cutting through flesh to do the episiotomy. That was a terrible noise. Oh my gosh. Do not do not recommend hearing that noise. I had a mirror while I was in labor with her. I could see everything. It was very motivating just kind of like seeing her coming down and coming out. Um, Finally, we had her. She was born. She was beautiful. I remember crying. They put her up on my chest. Um, she looked just like my husband. It was crazy. Literally his twin. My mom and husband were in the room when she was born with me. My dad and brother and my grandma were out in the waiting room. They came back, saw her. It was super special, great moment. Then they took us back to our other room in about 2 hours after she was born. So at this point, it was getting pretty late. at night. I had her at 10:41 at night. 2 hours later is when we moved to our room. And remember, guys, I had been up since 2:30 p.m. the day before and worked 4 12-hour shifts in a row. So I was absolutely exhausted at that point, did not have much capacity left in me. They asked if I wanted to keep her in our room. And I just said, yeah, she was sleeping, and so I just said, yeah, it was fine. So they had her in her little isolette beside us in her room. I was trying to go to sleep, and something just like woke me up out of nowhere. I don't know if it was God, instincts, exhaustion, what it was, but I just like woke up and I knew like something was, I just like was anxious, like something was wrong, need to check the baby. So I still was not feeling great or anything. I turned the little light on, woke my husband up and said, I need you to check the baby. So I was like trying to like look at her and everything, and she looked grayish. And I was just like, oh my gosh, something is wrong. We hit the nurse button. I remember asking for my nurse to come down there. Something was wrong with my baby. And she came and looked at the baby and everything. My husband was getting up. He thought I was acting crazy because he didn't think anything was really wrong. But medical instincts said, yes, something's wrong. Her color did not look good. Her color did not look good. And when they suctioned her out at birth, she definitely, I don't think, cleared her airway all the way. And had kind of a weaker cry. And so they took her back into the nursery and at that point, I told my husband, go with her. I think I fell back asleep. I was literally so exhausted, guys. Like, I was crying, called my mom, told her something was wrong with the baby, and then I think I just fell back asleep. I was so tired. And then I remember the doctor came back and talked to us, and our pediatrician, the doctors actually would go into the hospital and see your babies, which was pretty rare. It was the only pediatrician at our hospital who still did that. Typically, you had a hospitalist pediatrician there, and that's who kind of took care of your baby. But our pediatrician came in the middle of the night on call, both of them. And they shortly retired, but they were the best. I'm so sad they retired. They both came in the middle of the night, talked to me, assessed my baby, said they thought she had pneumonia, thought she had aspiration pneumonia, and she aspirated when she was in the birth canal because she was down there so long, and aspirated some amniotic fluid. So they ordered her antibiotics. She did need some help with breathing. She was on the hood oxygen, just laying underneath the hood with oxygen coming towards her. She wasn't on like the CPAP or anything like that. Didn't need intubated, but did need some oxygen support of the little hood. So that was terrible. That was terrifying. She was born on a Tuesday. I got discharged on Thursday, and she did not get discharged till Friday. So we were having to go back into the sick nursery because our hospital did not have a NICU. It was a sick nursery. So it was a step below that. If she needed any more oxygen or requirements or anything like that, they would have had to ship her out to a bigger hospital. But luckily she did not. So I was having to go back there to feed her because I was breastfeeding, and to see her. Family and friends were coming to visit me and could not see my baby. I remember being super sad because everyone else, I could hear their isolettes in the hallway, and they were like wheel other people their baby, and I like could not have my baby, and it was like the most terrible feeling. So I cannot imagine for NICU mamas what you guys must feel, because this was not even as serious as that, and it was heartbreaking. So but yeah. So I got discharged on a Friday or on a Thursday. They kept me in like a gap room so I could still stay there, but they were really busy and didn't know if I was going to get to stay or not. It kind of depended on the census, and luckily a lot of the moms went home, and so I did get to stay so that I could still go back and forth and see her. And then she got discharged on a Friday, and we had her appointment with the pediatrician on the Monday. So we had her all weekend by ourselves doing the thing. When we went to that very first appointment, she was kind of jaundiced and they thought maybe she would have to go back. So that was scary. So with her bilirubin levels, it wasn't enough to get her readmitted, but they were concerned. So we had to go back home, kind of have her out in the sunlight and daylight to kind of help with her bilirubin levels, and then bring her back a couple days later. And luckily, everything worked out well with that. And she didn't have to get readmitted or anything. They did do a newborn screening on her, which they did call me a couple of days later and was concerned that she would maybe have cystic fibrosis. And so I remember getting the phone call from our pediatrician's office with the blood work results from the hospital saying that they thought that she possibly had cystic fibrosis. I was like, oh my gosh, that is terrible. I was super emotional. I was crying. My husband was on a walk with the dog. I called him and I was like, you need to get home right now. Like, this is serious. So they want us to bring her back in, repeat her newborn screening. And apparently they are very sensitive. If you do not get all the alcohol off of their heel or let it dry all the way, it can give you a false positive for cystic fibrosis and something else with her kidneys, nephro something, I can't remember, but something else with her kidneys also popped up as positive. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like, what are we going to do? Cystic fibrosis is a pretty serious health condition that does have, a lot of needs required for care and a shorter life expectancy. So like that was like heart-wrenching. But luckily when we did her second newborn screening at our pediatrician office, everything came back perfectly fine. She did not have any health conditions, no cystic fibrosis, no kidney disease, anything. So that is the story of our daughter and how she came to be, and our birth story with her. And I will also make one for my son here at some point, just so he has that video as well. And I will see you guys next time. Bye, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the video.